Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. On this episode or video where I'm trying out a new format, I've always liked reviews. I'm going to try doing a review, see how it turns out, probably really badly. But Star Wars Episode 8 came out yesterday. I just watched it. Now I'm going to talk about how I felt about it. And so this is going to be a very spoilery review. But before I get into spoilers, for people that click on it, I just want to know if I liked it or not. No, I did not like it. I saw this was a pretty bad movie. I honestly don't understand the praise it's getting. It had like a 96 as of me recording this, which is way too high in my opinion, but who really cares about ratings at the end? It's just a number that means nothing. But I just don't understand why people like this. Like, I think I do actually understand why people like this, and I'm going to get into that way at the end of it because it has nothing to do with like the plot or anything. It has kind of more to do with Disney, but if you like Star Wars, see it. I mean, it's definitely a Star Warsy movie. It has elements of Star Wars in them. It just doesn't feel fully like Star Wars like the last two Disney Star Wars did, which is really a weird thing to say, but hopefully if you watch this whole review, you'll understand where I'm coming from. So I'm going to get into the reviews right about now. I'll give you like a second to click off, or right there, or swipe it. No, but I'm gonna guess by now you've clicked off, so we're gonna go right into the story. Wow. This story is really weak in this film, in my opinion. Pretty much just imagine how you think the story of episode 8 will go by like a logical standpoint, and it happens. Everything you just imagined pretty much happens. Does Luke go to the good, dark side, just disown the Jedi pretty much? All that happens in the movie. Does Rey partner with Kylo, or does Kylo partner with Rey? That all happens. Does Princess Leia die, or is she still alive by the end of it? Honestly, she dies and is still alive by the end of it, to be honest with you guys. Just everything that can happen happens, and it makes the moments where you have cutaways, like the famous Star Wars cutaways where you have a moment of suspense just building up, and then they'll cut away from it into the next plot line, feel like nothing, because you know it's all just gonna happen, because by like 40 minutes into the movie you've already had Princess Leia dying, Princess Leia being alive still somehow, which I'll get into that scene later because that's what really irks me. Then you got Rey partnering with Kylo, which Kylo partnering with Rey to betray Snoke in just a span of like 40 minutes, and it just makes you not care anymore. Which then makes you realize there's way too many plot lines going on in this movie, such as probably the plot line they're pushing the most through the promotion of this movie. It's the Luke and Rey one. It just drags on for like more than half the movie. It's just Luke and Rey on an island, and it's them going, "Hey, Luke, will you teach me the ways of the Force?" Luke's like, nah, fam, I'm not into the Force anymore." But you know by the end of it, Luke's gonna show her the Force and how it all works. So why take over half the movie to show us this happening and just get to the part where you feel it even more by introducing us more to the new characters? But you spend more than half this movie toying with emotions that are not ever there throughout the whole movie. And then by the end of this like plot line, you have Yoda randomly show up, and then Luke is starting to show evil because he's gonna burn down the Jedi texts that were there the whole time inside a tree. But Yoda randomly appears and goes, "No, the books don't mean anything, destroys them. You know the Force is still there with you," or something. He just shows up and shows up for not even a minute just to teach Luke a pointless life lesson that means nothing, and I honestly believe it's just there to massage the viewer's head and remember, like, "Ooh, old Star Wars character, I see, you likey seeing Yoda." That's all it felt like he was there for, and it just showed no point, and just shows how disorganized this movie is and how it doesn't know what it wants to show. Which that was just one plotline. All that happened in one plotline. Luke going from good, bad, disowning all of Jedi to rejoining the Jedi and just disappearing and dying. And then Yoda randomly appearing. That happened just from one plotline. That's like a whole movie. And just one plotline of this 2.5 hour movie which I'm gonna get to the next plot line right now. Just gotta turn the page of my script I wrote, because I wrote a script for this one, boys. Now the next, I say, main plot line is one with the new character Rose and Finn. Pretty much their plot line takes place on a very, very obvious, I'd say painfully obviously unfunny and unoriginal commentary on the 1%. Yeah, there is commentary on the 1% in this movie for some reason, which is really, really more funny because Disney's owned by Star Wars now, which is top tier 1%, even more so that of recording that they just bought Fox, which is just so stupid and it's so painfully obvious. The reason it's so painfully obvious is because they go to this whole new, like, this, I guess, planet only for the rich, and the new character Rose, who is so terribly written, it's painful. Her whole motive is she's completely devoted to the rebels while also hating the 1% because they treated her like sister bad or something. That's her whole, like, just character motivation, and that's all the plot development on her we get. And she's gonna be a main staple in the Star Wars series from here on out, and that's all we know about her. That's like horrendous, and it's just painful that this whole plotline is just commentary about how much the 1% sucks, and how the poor is better than the 1% or something. It makes no sense. But while all this is happening, there's still 2 more plot lines going on. There's another plot line that stems from this plot line where there's a other new I say main character who it means nothing to the Star Wars series, but they build up like she is Vice Admiral Holdo. I don't know how to say her name correctly. She's the one with purple hair. Yeah, she's pretty cool. She's a granny with purple hair. But her plotline is, so you find out early on in the film that the First Order can now track wherever they hyperdrive. And so she's like, oh no, Princess Leia's dead. We'll get into that. I'm saving that for a separate part, 'cause that part just angers me. Is what I get when I think about Princess Leia in this movie. But Princess Leia's dad, there's got to be someone that takes over, because like all the higher ups just got obliterated. So you have Vice Admiral Holdo being the next in command take over, and she's trying to figure out a way to get people off the ship, but she knows how to get them off right away, but she doesn't tell anyone. Therefore, the other character on the ship, Poe, who is now a completely different character arc, who is kind of just like a rebel and doesn't listen to what the higher-ups have to say to him, which seems really out of character in this movie, because at the beginning of the movie, Princess Leia gives him orders and he just shuts her off to calm off mid-sentence and does it anyways, which seems really out of character for this person, which is kind of a huge problem with it that I'll get into again later. But anyways, so Poe is like, I don't like you, Holdo. You don't have any plan. You're just gonna kill us all. But the whole time she could have just said, no, here's my plan that I've had the whole time. But she doesn't say it to move the plot along, so there's another plot line going on. But she could have easily just said what was going on, and none of this would have happened. So why was this a plot line? Lastly, there's one more plot line with Snoke. And Snoke is so underutilized and pointless in this, you realize now, in this Star Wars in general. He's pretty much, throughout all of Episode 7, he's built up as this person more mightier than the Emperor, more powerful than the Emperor ever could be. He has a hologram that's like as humongous. But probably in the first, I don't know why I did that 3 times. But probably in like the first 15 minutes, you see his face just right up. Which, he looks like a really good video game villain. He looks like a good video game character. But he doesn't look realistic. He looks like a burn victim, but like a really shitty burn victim. And just whatever opposing threat we started to feel for him through Episode 7 is just completely destroyed by whatever we feel now. Because probably in the first 40-50% of this movie, he's killed off and just never really referred to again for no reason. And it's like, why would you even have this character in the first place? It seemed like J.J. Abrams had a completely different idea for the Star Wars series when he was setting it up. Then Rian Johnson came over, directed this one, and just completely changed the tone of it, which that's the end of all the plot lines I have on this film. But now we're going to get into the next biggest gripe I have in this, the character development. Like I've said before, Rose is really poorly handled. I kind of explained why. I hope you understand why I thought Rey was very poorly handled. But there's other characters in this film that are in it for little percents of this film that are killed off and serve nothing at all in this film. There's Snake Guy, who is a guy who talks like a snake and walks like a snake, but is a man for some reason, which isn't ever explained why he acts like this. I think if he acts like this because it's like, oh, it will be so subtle no one will notice, but he's a snake. Therefore, since he acts like a snake, he will be a snake and double-cross him later on in the movie. And that happened, and it's like, this was so painfully obvious, like your social commentary not even 20 minutes earlier. Why would you do this? And then he leaves and never appears again once he betrays them, and there is no stakes for this character whatsoever. And then there's another character in this movie on the same planet, the 1% planet, that Poe and, what's her name? Rose. So many R names in this film. It just trips me up, man. Finn and Rose were trying to find, because the Snake Guy's also a master hacker. I forgot to say that. But he's a really good hacker, apparently. But they were trying to find a different hacker at first. And when they meet this hacker, he's like, we'll talk to them later, pretty much. Or we'll worry about them later. And you never see him again. And it just feels really weird. And the next part I'm going to go into is the Princess Leia Superman moment. There's the moment in this movie where the Super Star Destroyer, or just the Star Destroyer, destroys the main bay on the Republic fleet. And so like people like Admiral Akbar and a bunch of the higher-ups in the Rebel Force just die, like Leia. But Leia doesn't die. She wakes up in space and really shitly, CGI-ly, flies to the bay doors, knocks on the door, and they open it for her, and she's completely fine. In the span of, like, she's, like, unconscious for probably about an hour or two. Because this movie takes place in a span of 6 hours. But you'd be unconscious out of, even if they wanted to go with it, she just has so much willpower or something. You're not going to be unconscious for 2 hours after getting your oxygen sucked out of you in space. And the way she flies is like the scene in Justice League where when Superman wakes up, he just goes like this and straight up in the air, the eyes just wake up. And eyes just shoot straight up. That's what this scene is. And it's the most jarring scene I've ever seen in a movie in my life. I don't understand why you'd have this moment in this movie, even less than a Yoda moment. And that Yoda moment made no sense. This makes less sense than that. And no one's talking about it. Like, what the fuck was this scene even a point of? Why'd she get shut off into space and wake up? And why by the end of it she's still alive? She probably spent about 2 minutes fully in space and she was completely fine. She opens the door with a gun after waking up. Shouldn't she be weak at least? Like, not be able to, like, to move, like, out of breath or something? But she's, like, just completely fine. I don't understand. Which brings me on to my next point. Why the fuck is there a second coming of Jar Jar? Yeah, so the Porgs are kind of like a more even poorly written Jar Jar. Like, Jar Jar, I feel like everyone knew, like, when they first saw episode 1, that, like, Jar Jar is here to sell toys, market to kids. But Porgs are even more like that, because unlike Jar Jar, who actually kind of had a point to be in the story, is just in here to like sell toys and make people go like, oh, that's cute, look at that little penguin, furry penguin guy, he's so adorable, I want the plushie I can buy now at Target for $35 or something. And they're so pointless, and even their character arc thing is really broken, because their character arc thing to make them seem cute and why they're the whole story is they're on Luke's island and then they're hungry because they have to eat, obviously, so Chewbacca killed one and is roasting him alive, and then a pork comes up and then he's like, no, you ain't my friend, I'm scared of Chewbacca. Then about later, next time you see Chewbacca, he's just covered in porgs for some reason, because the porgs love him now, even though they were just scared of him, which is really, really makes no sense. My next point I want to make is Episode 7 is a really good Star Wars movie. Episode 7, I feel like, did a really good job, even though it felt like it retreaded A New Hope. You understood why. It was really just building up the next 3 movies. And it was really well done. You really got to know the characters and everything. Like, you saw them start from nothing, and they kind of ended up at something, but they were still not that big. And you really understood these characters and their motives. And even the old characters, you understand their new motives that they have from their old selves. But in Episode 8, it just retreads all this again. You see the rebels even see smaller than usual, and it makes you wonder, why do the First Order even care about the rebels if there's only a few hundred of them left? And there's thousands with a Z of them. You really start to wonder, what's the point of all this? And it's in this moment I realized how just Disney just ruined kind of Star Wars. I know I sound pretty cliche like the average Star Wars hater right now saying Disney ruined it, but they kind of did, in the way that this feels really like a Marvel movie. This is structured like a Marvel movie. The previous before felt like Star Wars movies to me. So, like, by that, I mean how it felt like a Marvel movie is that, to me, Marvel movies are built on 3 things. They are built on comedy, action scenes, and slowly moving the plot along to a final movie that will restart the cycle again. Which is what we're seeing right now with Marvel to Infinity War, which is pretty cool. I really like the Marvel movies. There's nothing wrong with this feeling like a Marvel movie, but this is a Star Wars movie. There's a previous, 8 Star Wars movies before this. This doesn't feel like the previous 9 movies that Star Wars series was built upon. This movie was built upon. It feels like a Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff. And this is none the more evident in the very first scene of this movie. You know, the first scene, I feel like the Star Wars movie is supposed to build suspense throughout the whole movie. Like, the way this movie starts is going to be a basic plot line for how this movie ends up, is how I always think of these movies, how they go. This first scene in this movie is a, hey, can you hear me now bit with Poe Dameron and Hux. And Hux being, the very serious, brooding leader, the one under Snoke, even higher than Kylo Ren, gets memed on so fucking hard by Poe Dameron by a, hey, do you hear me? I have a very important message for Hux. Can you talk to him? Hux speaking here. Yes, what would you like to say to me, Poe? Guy from the Rebel Alliance. And he just keeps saying, hello, can you hear me? I can't hear you. To stall time. Something that you'd see in a Marvel movie that Tony Stark would do to stall Ultron or something. And it made me realize this movie is way too comedic. Like, don't get me wrong, there's Star Wars scenes, the Star Wars movies before this have really serious, really comedic moments, but this is non-stop. There's moments with Kylo Ren depicted in the 7th movie to be very unstable, doesn't know how to control his power, a very serious person. But in this one, his character arc is completely switched around, and now he's a very comedic person. He's cracking one-liners, always fighting, betraying Snoke and fighting Imperial guards. And it just makes you realize that this is just a Marvel movie with Star Wars on it. It's a never-ending cycle. When this movie ended, I realized nothing in this movie happened whatsoever. This movie ends where it began. You could skip episode 8 and go on to 9, and the only question you'd have is, wasn't there a guy named Snoke in here? I wonder what happened to him, but he wasn't really in episode 7 that much, so who cares? My final thoughts of this movie, this is a never-ending cycle of Star Wars, and it makes me realize why Rian Johnson got 3 extra movies out of this. It's because it feels like Marvel, and Marvel makes Disney billions and billions of dollars, and this is just Marvel now. It makes me kind of nervous for them owning Fox now, to be honest, because I feel like all the movies now are just going to be like Marvel, which is just going to blow up in their face, I feel like, at one point, because as I was watching episode 8, my love for Star Wars kind of just dwindled. Like, I'm kind of just oversaturated at this point. I honestly don't care about these characters that much anymore. This movie kind of just ruined it. Like, they completely switched the characters, how everything goes. And it's just not a good movie. It kind of just ruins episode 7 even more. And I really liked episode 7. I still do really like episode 7. But this just ruins it. It just completely just retreads everything. Kind of like how I'm retreading this thing about how it's just a never-ending cycle. This movie ends with a kid that you see for about 10 seconds on the 1% planet having the Force, and it makes you realize this kid is going to either pick good or evil, and the cycle is just going to restart. And this war is never ending. There will always be a good fighting evil in Star Wars. And the journey there is just going to be the same 3 movies over and over again, because they're too scared to try something new. This just retreads Empire Strikes Back, it feels like, but even worse. At least in Empire, which I think is the second movie, watch me be wrong and get roasted in the comments, but in Empire you had like actual plot development. You had the middle story have twists and turns, such as you finding out Darth Vader is Luke's father. The twist in this movie is Yoda's in it, and I think maybe Leia has the Force now. And that's where I'm just going to end it. That's my final thoughts on this movie. I know this review is kind of rambly, but hopefully it was kind of good. I worked a bit hard on this, actually. I actually wrote a decent size script that I kind of still rambled on. But if I had to give this a rating that means nothing, I'd probably give like a 5.5 out of 10. There's good parts about this movie. There's some cool moments in here, but the cool moments don't outweigh the bad moments, because there's a lot of bad moments. So that's it. If you liked this video, remember to like and subscribe and comment about my lisp and how retarded I sound and how I don't have a high enough IQ to completely understand this movie. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you like these reviews, let me know. They'll get better over time, probably. This is the first review I've ever done, so I know it's pretty shitty, but hopefully there's still some like redeeming moments about it, and like I got my general point across. Just give me some, I don't know, if you like the reviews or not. I know I rambled on a bit, but hopefully next time I do a review, if you guys like it, it'll be better.